Read carefully what the serpent says to Eve in the Garden of Eden. It promises that if she eats the fruit, her eyes will open and she will know good and evil. And here's the detail almost no one notices. The serpent was right. Eve eats. Her eyes open. She comes to know good and evil. Everything the serpent promised happened, exactly as it was said. In the text, it is the serpent that tells the truth about what the fruit would do. If you appreciate history built from the sources, leave a like and subscribe. It is what allows this investigation to continue. This video will not hand you a closed answer. It will give you what the text actually says, both sides, and an enigma that divided readers of the Bible for nearly 2,000 years. The conclusion is yours. The question begins with a creature that may never have been what you think it is. Let's start with what everyone knows, and with what the text, in fact, never says. The image we carry is clear. The serpent of Eden is Satan in disguise. The devil entered the garden in the form of a snake to tempt Eve, ruin humanity, and set the whole fall in motion. That's the story we hear in church, in books, in paintings. But open the book of Genesis, the Hebrew text, and look for the word Satan in that passage. It isn't there. Look for devil, not there. Look for fallen angel, demon, tempter. None of it appears. What the text says is this: the serpent was the most cunning of all the animals God had made. An animal. Cunning, yes. Talking, yes. But described in the letter of the text as a creature among the other creatures, not as the cosmic enemy of God. And there is a detail in the original word that deepens the mystery. The Hebrew term used is nachash. It usually means serpent, but the root of that word carries other senses: to whisper, to enchant, to divine, and even something tied to shine. Some ancient Jewish interpreters, long before Christianity, did not picture the nachash as a crawling snake. An old rabbinic commentary describes it as an upright, radiant creature, possibly with an almost angelic appearance, one that only afterward, as punishment, is condemned to crawl on its belly. In other words, even within the Jewish tradition, the identity of this creature was never simple, and its association with Satan, the idea that became common sense, is not in Genesis. It appears much later, and this is where the story begins to turn. If the serpent isn't called the devil in Genesis, where did that idea come from? The explicit connection between the serpent of Eden and Satan only takes firm hold more than 1,000 years after the Eden story was written. It takes shape in the Jewish literature of the Second Temple period, and later consolidates in Christianity. The most famous link is in the book of Revelation, the last of the New Testament, which speaks of the ancient serpent called the devil and Satan. It is that verse, written in the 1st century after Christ, that definitively stitches the serpent of Eden to the enemy of God. Notice the scale of that. The reading that seems obvious today, serpent equals devil, was an interpretation laid over the text centuries after it was born. The first hearers of the Eden story didn't have the devil in their heads when they heard about the serpent. That character was inserted later, retroactively, by readers who had already built the figure of Satan and looked back. And the moment you remove that layer, the moment you read the serpent without the mask of the devil, an unsettling question appears. A question that an entire tradition of readers took to its ultimate conclusion: if the serpent told the truth about the fruit, and if what the fruit gave was knowledge, then what exactly did the serpent do wrong? And here enters the group that answered that question in the most radical way possible. In the first centuries of Christianity, there existed a set of sects that historians today group under the name Gnostics, and within them was a specific group that did something that sounds almost unthinkable. They revered the serpent. They were called Ophites, from the Greek ophis, serpent. Their reading of Eden was a complete inversion. For the Ophites, the god who forbade the fruit and wanted to keep humans in ignorance was not the supreme, good god. It was a lesser deity, jealous, tyrannical. And the serpent was the messenger, the one who brought to humanity the gift the jealous god wanted to hide: knowledge, gnosis. In this reading, eating the fruit was not humanity's fault. It was the first step of its liberation. The serpent did not ruin paradise. It opened the eyes of slaves who didn't even know they were slaves. It was the hero. Now, honesty is required here, and it is twofold. First, the Ophites were a minority group, considered heretical, and their view was fought and crushed by the church that became dominant. Nearly everything we know about them reaches us through the writings of their enemies, who describe them in order to refute them. Exactly the same problem we find with other lost voices of antiquity. Their reading is not the hidden truth of Genesis. It is an ancient interpretation, bold and defeated. But, and here is the discomfort, why was this reading possible? Why was it able to anchor itself in the text? Because the text, read cold, leaves open cracks that the tradition later had to close. And those cracks are still there. Look at the cracks, one by one, without the interpretation laid over them. First crack, the serpent told the truth. It said Eve would not die immediately upon eating, and that her eyes would open to the knowledge of good and evil. And that is what happened. Eve did not drop dead in that instant, and the text says, right afterward, that the couple's eyes were opened. Strangely, in the account, the serpent's promise is fulfilled. Second crack, God himself in the text seems to confirm it. After the couple eats, there is a verse in which God says that the human being has become like one of us, knowing good and evil. That is, the text places in God's mouth the acknowledgement that the fruit did in fact give humans something they didn't have before. Exactly what the serpent had said. Third crack. What was forbidden was the knowledge of good and evil. And here lies a theological paradox that thinkers have debated for centuries. Before eating, how could Adam and Eve know that disobeying was wrong if they did not yet possess the knowledge of good and evil? The very ability to judge one's own action as good or bad is precisely what the fruit grants. It is an enigma the text does not resolve. None of these cracks proves the serpent was a hero. Each has answers within traditional theology. The serpent told a partial truth in order to deceive. The knowledge came at a terrible price. Obedience did not require understanding why. These are serious and ancient answers, but the cracks are real. They are in the text, and it is in them that for 2,000 years, opposing readings were able to take hold. So, was the serpent the hero of Eden? There will be no closed answer here, not out of evasion, but because the story itself was built to sustain more than one reading. The Genesis text never calls the serpent the devil. The creature tells the truth about the fruit. God, in the account, confirms that knowledge was acquired. And an entire tradition, now forgotten, looked at all of this and saw not a villain, but a liberator. On one side, the reading that won, that carries real weight. The serpent is the tempter, the voice of disobedience, the one who offers autonomy at the cost of ruin, and the knowledge it brings comes with shame, pain, and death. In this view, it told a half-truth precisely to seduce, and the price proved obedience would have been better. On the other side, the defeated reading, which the text never quite managed to erase, the serpent as the one who opened humanity's eyes, who traded an innocence, ignorance, for consciousness, choice, and knowledge. The very things that, for better and for worse, made us human. And perhaps the most unsettling thing is to realize that the Eden story is not, at its core, about a snake. It is about a question that has never stopped haunting us. Is knowledge worth its price? Is it better to live protected in ignorance, or to pay the cost, the shame, the pain, the death, in order to see? Every time a human being chooses to know a hard truth rather than remain in a comfortable lie, they are, in a way, eating the fruit again. The serpent promised the eyes would open, and they did. What we do with what we see afterward, that the text leaves to you. This is one of those rare stories where reading the text carefully does not close the question, but throws it wide open. The layperson and the specialist begin from the same point, the same ancient words, the same fulfilled promise, the same silence about who the serpent really was, and the same private decision about what it means. The question remains open, exactly as it is. Was the serpent the hero or the villain of Eden? The answer this time is yours. On screen, the companion video, Why the Devil Wasn't in the Original Bible, the other half of the same story. Thank you for watching. Until the next one.